met Ravi in Stanford. So he and his wife both are actually part of Stanford's like Distinguished Career Institute, DCI.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and as always, I met him while drinking at a Friday event, which was great. And I think we've had a lot of chat, and obviously I thought they are also, they have a dual home here in Singapore. Singapore's home, but also like now with their kids in the US, they're spending a lot of time there. I thought it would be great for Ravi to join, so I'll just read off his background, and then we'll go in a little bit on like a more informal introduction from Ravi on things. So Ravi is a C-level senior exec with 30 years of corporate experience in US, Europe, Japan, China, Southeast Asia, and India at major technology companies, including Intel and Microsoft. As general manager of Intel Japan, Ravi was instrumental in building the Intel brand by conceiving and launching the Intel Init initiative. It's very popular in Japan, so this has been, which ultimately led to the worldwide Intel Inside campaign, which the rest of us are familiar with. As president of Intel China, he drove Intel's entry into China and developed a multi-billion-dollar business by establishing a strong ecosystem and brand awareness. Ravi co-taught Intel managers with Stanford University faculty, focusing on strategies for Asia's emerging markets. As head of Microsoft's MNC group in Asia, Ravi grew the business exponentially in India and key Southeast Asian markets. He's also demonstrated his expertise in creating and scaling new businesses. You must feel great about hearing all of this. Businesses building adaptable and collaborative, high-performing organizations, mentoring leaders, and entering both emerging and high-growth markets. Ravi is a skilled communicator and a decisive leader who leads by example. This is all on Stanford's website, by the way. So Ravi completed his Master of Science at Oregon State University, after which he attended a 4-month-long education program at HBS, Harvard Business School. He's actively involved with Harvard Club in Singapore, and in partnership with the Ministry of Education of Singapore, he has spearheaded a program for underprivileged college students. So a lot of giving back and education stuff. Currently, he teaches MBA and EMBA at Nanyang Business School as a practice faculty as well, specializing on emerging market strategies. He's also on the Asian Advisory Council of Washington University at St. Louis, US. Ravi served also on the board of Singapore American School for 5 years. So after all of that, the first question I wanted to ask you was, one of the stories you told me was your day one at Intel when you met Andy Grove. So walk me through a little bit about what was Intel like in the early days when you started, and how did that journey kind of took you to Japan and China and then back to Singapore here?
I started as a new college grad, Rohit, in 1982 with Intel in Silicon Valley. That was a very different era. We just began to use personal computers before other technology inflections happened, like move to internet, and then came mobility, and then came cloud, and now AI. So I was at a very early stage of the computing. There was no social media, no internet. Apple was a tiny company. And so this is my first day as a new college grad in Silicon Valley. I grabbed my lunch and sat outside. Here comes a man, can I join you? I said, please come on in. And he asked me how long you have been at Intel. I told him today is my first day. And I don't know what stupid things happened to me. And I asked him that, what do you do at Intel? And because there was no internet. So I had no idea who the leaders look like. And he said, I do a very kind of a dull and a boring job. And I asked a second stupid question, which I will never excuse myself. I said, you mean you are in accounting? He said, oh, very, very similar to that, you know. And he said, by the way, I am Andy Grove, and I have to allocate the funds, which group gets how much money, and I'm the CEO of Intel. And boy, I mean, that was a real shocker. I am a new college grad on job training, My aspiration is to get a US green card. And now I'm thinking, look, this guy is now going to fire me for asking stupid questions of him. He left after 20 minutes and he told me, why don't you call my office and see me in 2 weeks? And I tell you, those 2 weeks
Yeah.
were the most dreadful in my life. I didn't want to call his office. I didn't want to see him because I was so embarrassed. And I was just wondering, what is he going to do? Anyway, I saw him after 2 weeks, and our 30 minutes one on one became a 90 minutes one on one. And because both Andy and I grew up under very similar circumstances. Andy Grove left Hungary during the Soviet invasion. So he basically worked in the restaurants, washing dishes to pay for his college education. So he was very much a self-made man. And one thing which Rohit did not mention, my background has been very similar. I grew up in a small village in India where there was no electricity. So till my 11th grade, I used to study with a kerosene lamp. And I lost my father when I was only 7. So I have seen my mother struggle, and that was the hardest thing in my life. I have seen extreme poverty, what it can be. So we shared a lot of common stories. And then I was leaving after 90 minutes. So I asked Andy, would you mind being my mentor? And he said, look, I don't have the time, but you call every 3 minutes, maybe I will give you 30 minutes time. And every 3 months I started seeing him as a mentor, and Andy has been very instrumental in influencing my life journey. So the first lesson I learned from my very first interaction, the power of mentorship. Not only I being mentored, but it also taught me how can I help other people who don't have the opportunities, how can I mentor others. And so I think that was the first wonderful lesson, and which also influenced my journey at Intel. A lot of my friends who started working in Silicon Valley, they're all stinking rich because they all did 1, 2, 3 startups and made tons and tons of money. But Andy, after 3 years in Silicon Valley, he told me that, Ravi, why don't you move to Europe and help us launch this Crush Motorola campaign. So I moved to London looking after Western Europe, and then I moved to Japan. Then he asked me to open up China. I didn't make the kind of whatever the money which a lot of the people I knew in Silicon Valley they made, but I had those wonderful opportunities of living in Europe, living in Japan, living in China. And to me, when I look back, no money can ever replace the wonderful experiences. I have 3 daughters. If you ask them, what is the single thing I did for them? They will tell you that I gave them the opportunity of living in different cultures. Going as a tourist and living in a different country are totally 2 different, things. And so I think that was a wonderful journey. And that also taught me that, look, Andy has been very gracious. So I learned from that incident 2 things which had been until today with me. Number 1, the power of mentorship. Doesn't matter how smart we all are. At the end of the day, we have 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. So something I learned from Andy, that more we can mentor our teams, if they can become even smarter than us, the whole organization can do miracles. I mean, one person can do only 1%, but if everybody is firing on all the cylinders, I mean, the organization can do miracles. So one thing which I did throughout my career, 30 to 40% of my time in every job, I spent on mentorship, coaching my teams, because I felt if they can be smarter than me, the organization will do wonderful things. The second thing which I learned was from this experience, the power of helping others. And as Rohit mentioned, that I mentored about 15 students from the polys. Some of them grew up in very hard conditions in Singapore as well. Everybody in Singapore is not, at the top of the pyramid. Like one girl I mentored, her father and mother basically were cleaning the toilets. They lived in a tiny studio in HDB, and she was a super bright student. And then after my 2 years of mentorship, I connected her with a friend of mine who ran Meta Asia, and he was so impressed with her that they hired her in Meta, and now she bought a nice 3-bedroom condominium for her family, took them for the first time to
Nice.
Europe, and that gives me a tremendous satisfaction that I was able to make a positive impact on somebody else's life.
That's great. So, by the way, can someone fetch a glass of water for Ravi as well? That would be great. Um, I want to talk more about like the obviously the business and the experience side, but just sticking a little bit more with your personal life. So I wasn't sure if you wanted me to bring up the growing up, but I think that's an important part of who you are, like where you started from. So two quick questions on that, like knowing like where you are today, if you had to give like maybe one or two advice to that young boy in India growing up, to I don't know, say something or do something differently, what would that be? And just briefly, like, how was the transition from there to US? How did that work out, and how did that then help you in the journey ahead?
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you for, thank you very much.
yeah. I think you could just yeah.
The first message to any young, bright student, I would say, you know, dream big, and nothing should hold you back. Doesn't matter what your background is, as long as you are prepared to put in the hard work, grit, resilience, and have a belief in yourself. Nothing can stop you. That will be my first message, that dream big and put your heart and soul into it, and with your resilience, nothing can stop you. To your second question, I will share with you a little bit about my journey. When I lost my dad, I knew that the only way for me to get out of that environment is I have to focus on education. And nobody can take away education from you. I worked my butt off and got the merit scholarship, and so therefore my family didn't have to pay for my education. And then after finishing my college, I got the scholarship to do my master's in Oregon State University. At that time in India, in Delhi, getting a US student visa was very difficult, especially for people like me who didn't have any property or any financial assets in India. And one of the reasons the US used to give was that you don't have enough attachment with India. In other words, you will not come back from the US. So I went for my visa. My visa was turned down 4 times in the US Embassy in Delhi.
This is a pre-Trump. Right?
Yes, much long back. I was very disappointed. So I requested Oregon State University to see if they can postpone my scholarship to next year. So I bought 1 year of time. So then I thought that I need to get out of India to another country where I can go and try for a student visa. I saw there was a job advertised in Kenya for teaching in a college, and I applied for the job. I was interviewed, and they asked me what salary do I expect. So I told them that any salary which can give me 2 meals to eat and a place to live, and I'm not going there to make money. My main goal is to learn and to contribute. And I was pleasantly surprised that I got the job offer, and I moved to Nairobi. And my goal was not to settle in Kenya. My goal was to apply for a student visa next year from the US Embassy in Nairobi. So I applied for the, I think it was the 5th time, and Nairobi knew that I had been rejected 4 times in Delhi. Immediately they rejected, same reason, you will not come back from the US. And again, I was very disappointed. So I came back to India, and again they rejected 6th time. So I pretty much gave up all my hopes. It was August 30th, and September 14 is the date. I have to be in the US, otherwise everything will be over. So I said, I'm going to try one last time. That is my 7th time. I never give in. This is what I believe, the power of resilience. And so I said, I'm going to try. I went to the US Embassy, and at that time there was no internet. She basically said that I have to pay 3,500 shilling. She's going to get my file from Delhi to really understand why I have been refused for the visa so many times. So I luckily got my salary previous day, so I gave all the money I had. I remembered I had nothing left in my pocket, not even $1 to call my friend to pick me up. So I remember I walked 3 kilometers on foot to my place, and then I called my friend that, look, I gave all the money, I need to borrow some money from you. So he lent me some money, and 5 days later I got a phone call from the US Embassy that they would like me to go for an interview. So it is September 5th. I go there, and there's a new counselor, Mrs. Hyman, wonderful lady, and she looked at me. She said, look, they are saying that you will not come back. And then she commented, she said, I really applaud your resilience, that you haven't given up. I think we would love to have people like you who have that kind of a commitment, and I'm pleased to give you the student visa. You won't believe me. I mean, that 30-second was a total, I cried because I have given up all my dreams, all my aspiration, and now hearing this that I'm getting a student visa. So she said, come and collect your visa 3 days later. I come home, spoke to my employer, and my employer said, no, I can't leave. I have to give a 3 months notice. And in Kenya, you cannot leave the country without getting a clearance certificate from your employer. I had no money. So I borrowed significant amount of money to pay 3 months of my salary in lieu of the 3 months notice, bought a one-way ticket, and I went to the US, and the rest is all history. So that's what I mean, that even when the odds are against you, as long as you feel that you have done everything best possible within your means, and even if she rejected me, if she had rejected me, I think I would have probably compromised in my life because I gave the best I could. And so that's my message to everybody, that they have a big dream and nothing should stop you with your hard work, self-belief, never give up, and put in your very best. And that has been my motto until now. And that has been also to somewhat secret of my success. When I went to the US, keep in mind, at that time, startups were not happening in that at the era. And there was a glass ceiling for the non-Caucasian people in the US. So as a non-Caucasian, I had to put in 30-40% extra effort to get the same recognition. But one thing early on I learned, even in that environment where there is a preference for the Caucasian staff, at the end of the day, if you can put in the hard work, deliver on all your KPIs, even your boss, he wants those people who can make him or her successful. I mean, people want those who get the results. And that is something which has been me, that once I committed to my boss, I never surprised them, and I always delivered on my commitments. If something came up, I was brutally honest with my boss and told them, I'm sorry, here are the problems I'm running into. What should I do? So that there is a plenty of time and we can work on the solution. Don't give a surprise. I never gave ever any excuse to any of my bosses in my whole life that sorry I couldn't do it, here are the reason 1, 2, 3. I always believe what are the 3 mountains I need to jump to make it happen. Having that mindset, can-do mindset.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, like every time I meet with Ravi, it's like this. Like, this is insane, inspirational stories, like about like just giving it 100%. I mean, there's many places we can take the conversation from here, but I wanted to kind of spend a bit more time on the Intel side of things. So I think just to recap, like over your time at Intel, what were the various products you were looking at from all the way from US to then like to China?
Yeah, I performed basically 2 roles. First of all, I never took a job, status quo kind of a job. 8 to 5, I never took the job because I feel if you take a status quo job, it will give you status quo return. So I always took jobs which are high risk, high reward. And either there is a no business, so I have to cultivate a new business, or business is struggling, you have to, kind of turn around and grow that business. So keeping that my belief, Uh, One role was that I was the general manager of Intel data center business in Oregon. It was a team of about 500 people, $50 million revenue, 100 million in losses. So my goal was, or the mandate to me was, either shut it down or turn it around. My wife was very skeptical that why did I accept the job, because two of my predecessors got fired in the previous 18 months, and she thought that I will be the next one. So I would say that I think so that's the one area, and the second area where I focused my energy was, and I'll share with you some of my learnings. The second was developing a business from scratch. That's when I went to China. I was employee number one. They gave me a title of President Intel China, but I was the first person, and so I figured
Answering the phone calls.
answering the phone call. But I would say that a couple of things I learned early on, which I could share with you, which are common in both. First of all, is the power of the talent. You know, always bringing the people who you trust, people who have the can-do attitude, people who will make things happen. You know, and to cultivate a new business, bringing that type of talent, and then you as a team leader, if you are a colleague, supporting them. I feel the main role of the leadership is a hard job, and one of the hardest challenge for me was, how can I create the environment where people can grow, prosper, and how can I support them? How can I, make them more productive so they can deliver their peak performance? So first is the power of the talent, hiring the right leaders, right people set, training them, and giving them the responsibility and authority, but with a clear accountability, so they understand what I expect, and so there's no surprise element. So I think that is the first part. Second was with regards to the data center. I am a believer that in any business, long term, you have to think about, or I thought about, where do I want to take this business 5 years from now? And will I have the opportunity of being number one or number two? I believe in any business, if you are not number one or number two, then it's only a matter of time before you will be obsolete. You ideally should aim for being number one in the focus segment. If not number one, number two is okay, as long as you have a game plan to get to number one. So when I was running data center business, first 60 days, my team was developing cost reduction products, like server products, one CPU up to 4 CPU, and very much cost reduction type of projects. I went to my CEO, Andy Grove, at that time. I told him that, I say, Andy, how much leeway do I have? He said, I'll give you 2 years leeway. So I told him that I'm going to stop all the R&D effort. We are going to bet the business where the future will be. Not where we are today, but where we thought the future will be. So I spent time with my CTO, with my team, and we looked at what the next 3 to 5 year, will look like. And then we decided that we want to develop server platform on the latest technology. Yes, it was a risk. It could fail, but we said that's the only way we could be number one. So we kind of started developing products on the latest Intel microprocessor. We looked at the modular architecture, so that if one customer wants something different, we don't have the resources to overdo everything. So our idea was that 90% effort should be common, and 10% can be customized depending on customer to customer. So we use the modular design. And then the third, we bet on basically, those stacks of, architecture where multiple CPU can be stacked. And so 2 years later, HP, Hitachi, Fujitsu, IBM, they all became, they loved the product, and rest is all history. And last year, that business, of course, now Intel is struggling, and that's a different story, how the leadership misstepped it. But at one point, it was a $30 billion business. And so I think the learning was, look at where do you want to take the business, and looking at the future and then asking a question, who are your top, follow the 80-20 rule. Who are your 20% of the market segments and customer who will drive 80% of your growth? And sometimes it's very easy when you come to the office to get trapped into the firefighting things. And it is very important that you stay focused on important things rather than urgent things. Having in your own mind, what are your big bets? What are the 3 mega priorities for you? Those based on the 20%, of the segments and the customer, which will drive 80% of your future revenue growth in the next 3 years, and staying focused on those. And once you make those successful, and the next question is, how can we replicate that to the next level of customers or next level of market segment without spending too much resource? And financial resources actually is the easy one. Many people think about money. In my mind, the hardest resource is the people resource, because even if you have the money, you cannot hire overnight and train them overnight. It takes a lot of time hiring people, training people. So human resource is your most precious asset. How do you utilize that? Where do you invest? And then asking a question, if this is where you want to be 3 years from now with the business growth, then asking another question, what competencies are needed in your team to be 3 years from now? And what competency do you have today? What is the gap? How are you going to fill that gap?
So I'm gonna throw to the team like after this question. So if there's things that you guys want to kind of ask specific, because Ravi has kind of hired like very large, very complex organizations and delivered like, I mean, one of the times when we met, he mentioned about like how he always went and took the struggling parts of Intel or struggling areas of Intel, because that was the opportunity for him to be a cowboy and actually get like massive returns out of that. But I want to kind of come back, like, because you touched upon it briefly. Obviously, we have Intel's new CEO is from Singapore, Le Bhutan. A lot of people obviously kind of feel that Intel completely kind of lost the storyline at some point in time. And of course, while you were in China and in Japan, you had Taiwan growing up in your neighborhood, right? Like with TSMC, with NVIDIA, with AMD, all these like giants coming out from there. How much of that was very visible versus like just suddenly sneaking up? And then I'm probably put you on the spot by saying like, what do you think went wrong with Intel?
Sure.
Because I think what's happening right now is like we are in the telco space. I would say we are number one in the product vertical that we are in, right? Like the number two is quite far away right now, and then so we are gaining more lead, which is great. But then we are also chasing leads in our defense, in our space, where it feels like, okay, are we either too small or too late to the game, or too early, or is this not gonna scale? So I'm trying to see if there's any learnings from this side, but
yeah. I would say when I was at Intel, Intel's bragging rights were in 2 areas. Number one, Intel was the unquestioned leader in process technology. Intel was the first in 7 nanometer, and they were the leader. TSMC was behind Intel. And the second bragging right of Intel was they were the leader in innovation. All the high performance, innovative architecture came from Intel. Looking at what happened today, I would say 2 things, which led to the Intel's downfall. This is something I think we can all look back and learn. Number one is, I would say being contented. Andy Grove wrote a book. If you haven't read, I would highly recommend. It is called Only the Paranoia Survive. Yeah. So what he meant was that you keep the organization always paranoid, even when you are successful. Never let them be complacent. I think over time, when Intel became very successful, the success brought complacency, and the organization lost that hunger, the fire, and as a result, Intel lost the leadership and innovation to companies like AMD. AMD was a tiny player, and today AMD valuation is 5 times higher than Intel. So my first learning is never let complacency come into the organization. Always keep people hungry, keep people on the edge, always keep pushing, the boundaries. So I think that's the first. Second, I would say is the leadership missteps. Paul Otellini, he was the CEO after Craig Barrett. Steve Jobs came to Intel asking for, hey, can you make microprocessor for smartphones? And Intel was making 70% margins with the data center CPU, and the smartphone CPU were a 30% or 20% margin business. He walked away from it. And the net result is Intel lost or they missed the mobile computing market. The second big
Huge loss.
huge loss.
Yeah.
The second loss was after Otellini, Brian Krasnick was the CEO. ASML, a Holland company, was the leader in lithography technology. Intel, TSMC, both were beta customers for their EUV, extreme ultraviolet lithography technology. TSMC adopted that. Intel basically said, no, we don't need it, it's a waste of money. And as a result, Intel lost the leadership in process technology. That was the second strategic mistake. And then the third was that OpenAI came to Intel about 7 years back, asking Intel Capital to make investment in OpenAI. And Intel basically said, CEO, that OpenAI is a joke, and or AI is a joke. We are not going to waste any money in AI. The net result is that Intel is missing in action in the AI game, and NVIDIA,
This is
which
Pat,
was
Pat Gilsinger, right?
Pat Gelsinger, or
Gelsinger,
before that Brian Krasnick, and NVIDIA, which was in the games market, today is the most valuable company at $5 trillion company. So coming back to Rohit's question, that you have three verticals, the telecom, defense, and then what you call
Space.
space.
Yep.
Clearly, I would say looking at where do you think will be the maximum growth, where the future will be. Sometimes it's easy to get tempted, for the low-hanging fruit, and the long-term bets can be a little harder. But I always feel that you have to aim big. I mean, if you have a dream that 5 years down the road, you want to be like a, $100 billion market cap company. How do you get there? Where is the growth going to come from? Right now, I mean, again, I'm not the domain expert, but I hear that people feel that the space and defense will be the two very growth sector. Telecom is today, but future is a question mark. How long telecom will last, with the, will other technologies replace them? So I would say putting your, efforts on where the future growth will come from, and choosing, that here are these three segments, here are the three customers we are going to focus on, and put your 200% of your energy behind that. Even if you don't succeed, you will learn and make a pivot, and your next bet will be a big success. But if you try to do bit of everything and looking at more today's business, then even the future growth business, somebody else might already establish a foothold. And I feel there is a tremendous advantage of being a first mover if you can be. But of course, there are risks associated with a first mover. So looking at calculating the risk, as long as you think you can manage those, then always a good idea to maybe try out maybe one customer in, let's say, space, who is the trendsetter and who can, if successful, can help you to be the first mover in this segment.
Yeah.
So basically, putting kind of the bet selectively, and that will be kind of my learning from my time with Intel and Microsoft.
It's awesome. All right, opening it up to the team. I think we've
You
talked
can
enough.
ask me any question by there. I'm very open, so you won't offend me. So
I have one question.
sure.
That's our co-founder,
I actually
Dinesh.
have two questions. Hey, hi, Ravi.
Hi, Dinesh. Pleasure to meet you.
Hi, Ravi. Ravi, thank you so
Hi,
much.
Dinesh. Pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you as well. Thank you so much for the time today. The two things came up when you were talking. I just wanted to ask you. One, you highlighted how Intel made three bad decisions, one after the other, and it all was coming from leadership. And I was wondering, in your personal opinion, what do you think is the root cause for a company that was so successful, so innovative, ahead of the game, to make three bad decisions, one after the other? Is it just complacency, or was it like change of leadership? What do you think is deep down going wrong that can cause? And we've seen this happen in other companies as before. Companies were extremely successful. They started the world with all the innovation, and then suddenly they slowly go down. You see, like Xerox Labs, IBM, etc. So, just wondering that was one question. The other one is I wanted to see what do you think about the future? What do you think the next 5 years are going to be the key defining insights of the technology that is going to drive us into the future? And I know everyone's talking about AI, but do you believe that? And are there certain aspects of AI you think are going to become more dominant than others? What do you think about robots and humanoid robots coming out? What do you think about self-driving cars? Are there any specific insights that are maybe a little bit more rare that you have very specifically that you would like to share with us about your vision of the future?
Thank you for the very good question, Dinesh. First of all, on the first question, two CEOs. One was Paul Otellini. Paul Otellini's background is finance. He rose through the ranks to be the CEO as a finance person. And when Apple came to Intel to design products for smartphone, Paul was very much looking at purely margin standpoint. He said, thought, Intel is making 70% margin with the data center CPU, and he felt, why do I want to get into a 20% margin business when? So I think that is one. Rather than looking at where the future is, I would say it was a short sight, purely looking at the numbers, and rather than the looking at long-term strategic importance of mobility or the mobile phone. He never, I think, probably thought that someday mobile phone becomes the computer in your pocket.
Yeah.
And I think that is probably a short sight, primarily because of his background. The others two blunders, I think, was from Brian Krasinik. My assessment is I never worked with him, but reading the news and talking to people I know, I would say it's primarily because of the ego.
Yep.
I mean, he felt, I'm the CEO, I know it all, you know, I don't need this EUV technology. I think Intel can do it much cheaper. Same thing with AI. And I have that real life experience myself. I worked for a startup company called Pendesic. It was a B2C company, and I was the general president for Pendesic Japan. That's how when I moved back. The solution was a turnkey solution, B2C. The CEO fell in love with the strategy, Howard Hughes, that we are going to sell the turnkey solution. When we were talking to customers, customers were telling us that, look, turnkey solution is not good enough. You need to integrate with my legacy processes, order taking, order fulfillment, inventory management. And he,
Yeah.
as a CEO, said, no, we are not going to pivot our strategic direction. And the net result was 9 months later, Pendesic closed the door after burning $100 million. They completely failed. Ariba was a company which made the mid-course correction and sold to IBM at a very high price. So I would say it is the leadership not really open to getting those market signals, getting the feedback from others. And I think the key learning from this is, again, be open to what you are hearing from your team, from the customers, market signal you are getting, and then putting them two and two together. To your second question, I am not again, sort of the, expert, but based on little I know, I feel that space and defense will be, I think, two very significant industries. I think robots, humanoids, I think, are going to play very important role. And when it comes to AI, I personally feel we have only seen the tip of the iceberg. I think AI is going to be a major inflection which we haven't seen before. The previous technology inflection points, whether it's a personal computing, internet, mobile computing, cloud, in my mind, they were nothing. I think AI and humanoid and the robotics is going to play a very important role. Yesterday, I don't know whether you saw on the TV in Washington, D.C., Elon Musk and Jensen Huang from NVIDIA, they were at the US Saudi Arabia Investment Forum. And Elon Musk's comment was that 10 years from now, everything will be done in space. And he was talking about the robots, humanoid. I think they will play very important role. So I think the key thing is the companies who bet on that future and small bets so they have a foot in the door.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to put all your eggs on the future because tomorrow, I mean, there's a high risk factor.
Yeah.
Important thing is as long as you have a foot in the door, so the moment you get the signals that the market is going to take off, you already have a design partner, you have a presence, you are ready to scale up. I think that's the key.
I really like that, and especially, I mean, someone else put it into perspective. People don't realize with Starship and with the New Glenn rocket that Blue Origin has, the amount of lift capacity compared to just what we have today will go up by a factor of 100.
Mm-hmm.
So the amount of stuff that you can just absolutely get done in space. So what does that unlock? And it's not, that pie is not going to all go to SpaceX, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the reality. But yeah, that's great points. Any other questions around the room?
I have a question. You mentioned the importance of mentorship and mentors. Do you continue to always have mentors through your career, and how do you find good mentors?
Yes, I always had a mentor. And how you find? I basically asked a question to myself first. What are the areas for me to improve? I know I may not admit to you, but in my heart of heart, I know here are my strengths, here are my weaknesses. That's the first question I asked. Then the second question I asked throughout my career was, who are the people within Intel who can help me on the areas where I am not good at, where I need to improve upon. And then once I identify those are the key executives, I just approach them. And like there was a guy, Frank Gill, one of the best sales leader I have met in my life. I was not very good at opening the doors at very large volume strategic customers, which can be multi-billion or multi-million, $100 million, $200 million customer. Frank was very good at. So I asked Frank, I said, Frank, I need to learn from you the sales development skills. I don't know. And he was and he basically said, Ravi, come with me. He took me on 3 customer calls. I just went with him and I saw him how he opened up the doors at the customer. And one thing which I learned from him is being very open, honest, and transparent with your high value customers. And after that, when I ran Intel data center business, one of my customers was Fujitsu in Japan and HP in the US. My software engineer left and my product commitment to my customer slipped by 2 months. My team came and talked to me that, Ravi, don't tell the customer if you told them we have slipped the schedule by 2 months, they will fire us. It didn't resonate with me. I said, no, it doesn't feel good. I immediately picked the phone, called both HP and Fujitsu executive VP and GM. I told them that, look, I got a bad news to tell you, and here is what I know. Think about it. Let's meet tomorrow. Look at what we can do. Both the customer basically said that they will loan software engineers, fly to my facility, work with my team. They worked with my team, and we delivered them the prototype 1 day ahead of our original commitment. Once you do that, those customers became not only our lifelong customer, but they became our ambassadors because so I think finding out what areas you really want to work on, and then you ask who is the right person, and being open. And like one thing which I learned from Andy Grove, he used to come to engineers' office, sit on their office, and he used to openly ask me them, hey, can you teach me about this? Like he asked me, I was so embarrassed. I'm fluent in Japanese and a couple of other European languages. So Andy comes to me, he said, Ravi, I need to learn how do you adapt to local language, local culture in Japan. So one thing I told Andy was that, Andy, I grew up in India, but I believe that wherever you go, you have to integrate with the local culture. If you try to recreate India in Japan or recreate India in Sweden, why do you want to leave India in the first place? So I said that's my, and so be very open, and then approach those people, and people would love to help. They don't mind mentoring.
So one first question from you. So we have a product line that we manufacture it in-house, and we do a lot of innovation on our products. I know the TikTok model from mixing improvement of performance and improvement of the process in Intel. Was it very important for the Intel success in your view? And is there a way how to kind of apply this in a
Sorry, I missed it. What is important to Intel?
the TikTok manufacturing, let's say, performance and process improvement as done in Intel?
Absolutely, yes, totally. I mean, Intel basically, I would say when they were the leader in the process technology and innovation, Intel started with what they call interdisciplinary team. They had the team where they had like a process engineer, process technologist, design technology engineer, and all different aspects, so that they could all get the holistic view what needs to be done. I would say that was a very powerful thing which Intel started, and that was a great thing behind, like even before the product became a real product, they started engaging with the design partner, asking them what is important in terms of feature, in terms of manufacturability, in terms of quality expectation. So understanding the holistic view, and then I think assembling a team which bring different function, so that you can look at the holistic view, because many time in the big companies there are silos, and that can be like a cancer. One function doesn't talk to another function, and then when things go wrong, then the functions start finger pointing at one another. It's not my problem, it is the team's problem. So to alleviate that, it is best to have an interdisciplinary team where you look at kind of together. And the other thing which Intel did very well was they gave common incentives. So for example, if the success of the product, people both in process technology, design technology, marketing, business, everybody had the same basically success KPIs. So if the success is not achieved, everybody loses out on that. So they have the common goal.
Maybe I can ask a question about like your time in Japan. As you were kind of building out the team both in Japan and China, like the people, the customs, the way they work, the value system is quite different from what you had seen in the US, right? So as you're building your team out, I think a lot of people here are hiring for their teams effectively. What are like 2 or 3 skill sets that you would look at, whether it's hard, whether it's soft, between like engineering and non-engineering kind of hires, and what were the shining examples of what worked out? And maybe a subset of that is just like I think team organization, because every individual here is double hatting or triple hatting as well, right? Like what are some of the kind of like organizational principles that helped the team be more effective?
Okay, thank you, Rohit. On the first question in Japan, I would say that during
and maybe any quirks of the Japanese value system.
During my time there, I would say the most important attribute or the characteristics of being successful in Japan is what they call in the Japanese language anshinkan, and that is the trust, peace of mind. Unlike customers in the US, Europe or in China or in other parts of the world, Japanese customers don't believe in switching vendors. Or, they want to stay consistently with the same vendor. So it is very important to build that long-term relationship, long-term trust, and that means being very open and candid with them. If the things are not going right, be very open that, look, here is the problem I'm having. How can you help me? What can we do together? Once they trust you, and they will not switch you to another vendor, and even if there's somebody else come with better features, with a lower price, they will always give you the opportunity that, Mr. Rohit, I'm getting this and this. How can you help me? So building that long-term trust, long-term relationship, that is very important in Japan. And some of the things people do, unlike in the US or in Singapore, a lot of business is done in the meetings. In Japan, you have to spend time cultivating relationship outside the meetings. And that means sometime going out with them for
Strong
drinks,
liver.
for
Strong
dinner. So I basically 2 evenings a week, I told my wife and that you will be with the girls. I will not be having dinner 2 evenings a week. And I told my team that every week on Wednesday and Thursday, these are my 2 days dedicated to the customer visits. So you can set me up with any customer dinner. So cultivating that close relationship, trust, that is super important. The second thing, when you have a trust with a customer, trying to understand that for your project to be successful at that customer, what is the decision criteria they will make and who are the key decision makers. It's very important to understand, because sometimes every customer will tell you, oh good, there are some, but they may not be the decision makers. So you try to find out as early as possible what is the decision criteria and who the decision makers are. In Japan, they use a language called honne or tatemai. Honne means reality, tatemai is the superficiality. Very many times the Japanese are always very, oh, Mr. Ravi, you're very nice, your product is very good, but they have no plans to buy it. So you need to get to the reality. What is the criteria for decision, and who are the decision makers, and how do you get to those decision makers who will make a go no go decision, so that you can tell them that, look, this is your decision criteria, this is where my platform is, and then what do you think are the next steps for you to move the needle to the next stop. With regards to the team, I found that clarity is very important. For example, for strategic project, I believe that, at least that's for me, that assigning a single owner is very important. For example, if let's say you're trying to win, let's say, call it Hitachi or a particular defense contract, having a dedicated owner so that the organization knows that he or she is the single point of contact, and then that person becomes the so-called conductor of the orchestra, and then he finds out what does the customer want, what is needed within the organization, and then he can pull the resources. Because the moment you have multiple people involved, I think the silos and the sort of people don't know whose role is what. So I would say having a very clear single ownership with clear role and responsibility is very important.
All right, we have time for one last question. Rajesh?
I have a question, yeah. So
Sure.
I was thinking about it. So you mentioned Beijing and you started the business there, right? So the question was more from the initial stages when you were like a startup, 2 months to get scale, right? So what are the challenges you face when scaling the business?
Sure. Well, first of all, I was very fortunate that I had a wonderful mentor, a guy named Sidney Rittenberg, an American guy who was married to he passed away. He was married to a Chinese wife, and he lived for 35 years in China. So he was fluent in Mandarin, and he had excellent relationship with all the senior leaders. So he taught me a lot. So the early challenges were, as you know, in China, 60% of the businesses are run by state. So the first key lesson or the key challenge is that you want the government to be your ally and not your adversary. How do you cultivate the relationship with the key government bodies? Clearly, I think that was the first challenge. And then the second, I think, challenge was at that time we were trying to grow the microprocessor business, but people didn't even know what the computers are used for. Computers were selling for $20,000, so expensive, and there were no application. So the first thing we did was that we created an advisory board. We brought 5 members on the board, one person from the government, one person from the industry, and that industry was Lenovo. Lenovo was a tiny distributor in China, and at that time the distributor wanted to be a major PC player. I mean, so he was on our board, and the third was a professor from Peking University, and fourth was an influencer. So we created a small board. I met them every week, and 1 hour a week or 2 hours a week, and we were saying, what do we need to do to get the business going? So basically, that led to 3 things. Number one, first thing we learned was that we need to educate people what the computers can do in China. There were no Chinese application for the computers. So Intel set up a R&D in Shanghai, and we localized the top 5 PC application from the US to the Mandarin language. Intel did it. So the power of the ecosystem, you have to enable the ecosystem. So the first is localize the popular US application in Mandarin. Second thing Intel did was create a new retail channel, because all the PC distributors, they wanted to make 40% margin on a $20,000 computer. They didn't want to bomb the price. So we hired the educated young children of the Chinese families who were selling newspaper, milk, and the mom and pop store. We gave them 1 week of boot camp training and enabled them to sell computers. So they used to take a computer on a bike door to door. A, they had a credibility in the local village, and B, they were able to sell computers and made more money than selling milk, newspaper, and Colgate toothpaste in their mom and pop stores. We created totally a new retail channel. The third, very important one, Intel decided to get into the PC business, not to sell under the Intel brand, but to sell under the local Chinese brand and to bring the price point down. So Intel in 1 year brought the PC price point down from $20,000 to $3,000. And Intel was making those motherboard and system and putting Lenovo's brand name, and these Chinese young educated college educated children used to go door to door on their bike. And I think those are the things we did. And then after that, once the market took off, then we launched the marketing activity. And the other challenge was hiring the leadership team. Very important. Although people speak the same Mandarin in Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan, and China, Sydney told me one very good advice. He said, Ravi, the people we hire must meet 3 criteria. Number one, they should be homegrown Chinese, not from Taiwan, not from Hong Kong. Number two, they have to have good connection with the government, because 60% of the businesses are run and influenced by the government, and you want to have roads into the government. So those people who had relationship helped a lot. And the third, that these people we hire, either they have studied in the West or they have worked with a Western company, not so much for the language, but more the cultural nuances. Many times people won't tell you the truth, and whereas in a Western culture or a Western company, you want to call spade a spade, and so that was important. So those are the challenges which we faced.
It's crazy. Oh, at the peak, what was the revenues from the China business?
China at a peak was about $8 billion a few years back. But then after that, of course, with the geopolitical issues, Intel losing the market on the whole shift to AI, and NVIDIA today, is just in the, and even AMD, which was a tiny as compared to Intel, is now, became a very innovative with regards to their architectures, with regards to their design. And I would say that I think the one concluding message, if I could share with you, and that is that the key, I think, secret for success or the failure is, I think, that fire and the hunger, and keeping the organization of paranoid, even till today. I mean, every day before I sleep, I make a list of the first priority things next day I have to do. What are my second priority items? I don't sleep till my first priority things are done. And if they are not done till 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm awake till 1. I mean, even until today, I still have the same fire, same hunger, same passion, whether it comes to my personal stuff or whatever that stuff. Keeping that kind of a, making that a part of the, DNA of the culture, I think that is super, super important.
It's amazing. I have to add one thing, is that a large part of his success is also Sunanda, his wife, that I have met. She's insane and amazing. And so
She is right now, my wife, she is right now working on her fourth master's in culinary therapeutics at the Culinary Institute of America. So here, basically, the theme is the food is medicine. And so I get a lot of advice
Medicine?
from her every day, long lecture, you shouldn't be eating this, you should be eating this, So, no, you would, I'm sure, one of these days, So I'm very fortunate.
we'll invite her as well.
Yeah.
Well, Ravi, thank you so much. I know we can keep talking about every small decisions that Intel did not take, you take to get everything here. But hopefully we get to see you more often.
No, you will, and I would
Yes.
say you guys are very fortunate. I want to tell you how I missed out the entrepreneurial journey in my life. I think you guys are very fortunate that you are, pursuing an entrepreneurial journey, and you are in a very hot space, with the space and the, the defense and all the growth opportunities. I mean, you can, sky's the limit. I mean, go and get it, conquer it.
Thank you. Thanks, Ravi.
Yeah.